right. Welcome to this episode of Growth Science. Today we're with Jeff Burkett, who is executive partner at Progressive Engineering and Heat Treating. Welcome, Jeff. Glad to have
Thank
you
you, man.
here.
Good to
Uh,
be here with you.
yeah, absolutely. And to start, I always like to just uh, share a few words about the individual that I'm speaking with, and so usually it's kind of a business focus, but when I think about Jeff, I really think about someone who looks out for other people. In fact, a little story, Jeff, you probably don't realize that the impact that this story about you had on me, but it's always stuck with me. One time there was a homeless gentleman who was walking near our school and he was lost. And Jeff actually, I mean, most of us, and me included, would have been either maybe gave him some directions or gave him a few dollars and try to avoid the situation. But I was just amazed by this. Jeff actually invited the guy to lunch, had him in his car, took him to lunch, and just took care of what he needed. And my interactions with Jeff has always been about how he looks out for other people. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say in his reflections on business. So to get started, Jeff, maybe you could just share a little bit about your background and your business.
Sure. Well, most of my career up until at Progressive Engineering and Heat Treating was in the corporate finance world. So I spent some time in New York as a consultant, went back to business school to become an investment banker, went back to New York and joined Morgan Stanley, was there for 5 years until coming to Richmond to be with a smaller M&A focused firm, mergers and acquisitions focused firm, Harris Williams, and was there for about 10 years. You know, it was the entrepreneurial spirit really caught up with me. And in 2021, I transitioned to leading Progressive Engineering.
Very cool. What has surprised you? I mean, you obviously went from the M&A world to actually leading this company. Was there anything that's really surprised you as a result of that?
Yeah, in M&A, I predominantly worked on the sell side. So imagine a real estate broker selling a house. I was the banker selling a company, and there was all the normal facets that you could evaluate how good a company's performance was. How good are they operationally? How good are they at marketing? And I used to hear a lot that, our people are really important. Our culture is really important. And that was always tougher to talk about and document and prove, quite frankly. And so we tended to steer away from that because, how are we to know how good people are?
Right.
And how important are people really? Like if your technology is really good, or your systems are really good, or your competitive advantage in the marketplace is really good. Those are the things we wanted to talk about. And those are the things that I looked at in thinking about potential business opportunities. But now I think I've been surprised by those apparently flippant answers about people really weren't flippant at all. They were entirely accurate, and they were kind of the holy grail of a good business. Do I have good people? Are they motivated? Are they enabled? Are they in a setting where they can collaborate, sharpen one another, and ultimately that was their competitive advantage in the marketplace.
I mean, that's a really interesting point. Do you think there's an opportunity to understand when people say it's our people, to understand better whether, how important the people are actually within the organization?
Yeah, it's tough. It was tough as a banker. It's a little easier now as an operator,
Right.
if someone in business, to recognize, well, what do you mean by that? And or give me examples of why your people do matter. And there's probably a difference between the manufacturing work that we do and maybe more service oriented industries where the product isn't tangible. For us, I have to have skilled machinists that can make a very complicated, highly engineered, highly spec'd part that's going to go into some application either on the OEM side or maybe into another bigger manufacturing facility. This is one gear or shaft in a bigger plant, and So my guy or gal, my machinist, our machinists have to know how to make that part, how to check it, um, you know, so that it meets all those highly engineered specifications. So that puts you into pretty rarefied
Right.
territory anyway. Like this is not just, you know, somebody working on an assembly line. They have to be highly skilled in this. And then there's the softer side, which is that machinist is working actually with 3, 4, 5, a dozen other machinists to all do their specific operations on a part. And so it's a discrete operation that they're doing, but it's also in a larger body, a larger team environment where and it's successive. So I can't do my portion until you've done your portion. And so the guy at the end, that's the machinist at the end of the line that's doing the last operation, she necessarily looks back and sees all of the hours and the time and energy that went into that part. So there's a little bit of incremental pressure. And so recognizing that, recognizing the work that your colleagues did to that part to get it to your station, all of that like necessarily puts us in a team environment.
Right.
And I think through examples like that, even when I worked outside of manufacturing with more tech-enabled logistics companies, we could evaluate the technology, but it did, like, you either got back to your people into whether is that proprietary software and why did you build it that way? What was the purpose? What's the business case? Or what does it enable your people who are using that technology to do? Why does it make them better? And
Right.
so people are still at the center of business. You can find lots of headlines on AI and whatnot, and who knows what the future holds. I know right now and for the foreseeable future in manufacturing, we are running machines, but we are very much at the center. People are very much at the center of the work we produce.
Um, and that's a great lead into my next question. I always feel like in this situation, people think when they come from a technology industry or services industry, they're like, imagine if we put these more advanced processes in place for a traditional industry. But I'm curious, is there anything you would see on the flip side that, like, from a more traditional industry or a physical product industry, any lessons that you've learned that you think would be beneficial to people in like technology or services?
Well, I see the iterative nature of, like, technology gets better, people get better,
Hmm.
productivity gets better. In certain instances, that it does necessarily mean fewer people are required to do a job.
Right.
We're small enough now that I think leaps in technology and capabilities will enable us to serve more customers and gain market share and need more people. That is at the core of my reasoning behind getting out of corporate and finance and investment banking into manufacturing and in a more blue collar setting or old economy setting,
Right.
was to work truly with people, manufacturing a tactile, real thing.
Right.
And whether we are taking material off raw stock and making a part, or whether we are one day 3D printing that part, I think the way we produce that gear or that machined part will likely change in the coming years and decades. But I think that iterative nature of working with our customer, figuring out this is how the engineer designed it, maybe through conversation and through several times making that part and seeing how it's deployed and its use,
Right.
picking up what it does well and what it doesn't do well, that's still a person-to-person interaction, and it's collaborative, and it requires the individual to have seen a lot of different parts over their career and recognize, oh, we've seen something like this similarly. If the angle of this tooth on this gear were to change this way, we think it would mate better with its additional parts. So
I mean, that's really interesting because I mean, obviously most people are working in a team environment, but the consequences end up being like if they're not working effectively together as a team would be, oh, we didn't hit our revenue number. But in your business, like it would cause a machine to fail if they don't work together effectively as a team. So I think it's a really, I mean, it's really thinking about how we can improve teamwork through examples like you just offered is really interesting. I think something that would be that I personally would take back and say, like, what can we do to work through this iterative fashion and make sure that we're being like good teammates? Because like in your instances, the consequences could be really severe if you don't have it really buttoned down.
Yep. This tends to be, and it is for us in particular, an apprentice, a master and apprentice relationship with machinist. So we know not all machinists are created equally.
Right.
Not all individuals have the same skill set. And this is true across, I think this is true across business in general, that
Right.
you have folks uniquely equipped to do certain things well, and those who struggle with that particular thing, but do something else really well. And so we try, and it's not always easy, but we try to recognize, let's play to people's strengths, and where we need to cover our weaknesses, we can with someone else's strengths, and figure out how that team really is not just the sum of its parts, right? It's something greater together. But yeah, the nature of what we're doing, we can always check whether or not that part is good. I used to do a presentation and maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't, maybe we won the business, maybe we didn't, maybe we lost for other reasons, or maybe we won for other reasons. And so the feedback was never really clear. It's crystal clear we have a drawing that measures the dimensions of a part down to the thousandths of an inch. And so when we measure it, we know it's either intolerance and it's accurate or it's not. And
Right.
so that feedback is probably different than a lot of other business settings.
That's interesting. And I actually I think the that you so you have a formal master apprentice relationship within your organization.
We do. Yeah. And in
How-
fact, we turn 100 years old this year. We were founded in 1923. And so we've had an apprentice program more than 80 years. I think we're the longest standing apprentice program in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Wow.
And we're recognized as such last year. I think it was 83 or 84 years last year. But, in machining or carpentry, a lot of the trades fall under the common arts, right? If you're looking at like liberal arts, fine arts, this is a common art, but it's an increasingly rare art for folks to know how to make machined parts. People just expect that stuff to be done overseas, and our economy is above that. Well, it turns out the scarcity of it makes it really valuable.
Right.
But the way that trade is passed down, it's a ton of hours in the shop with certain machines and really learning from somebody who's been in the trade for decades. We do go to trade schools, and there's a lot of book knowledge to add in. I mean, there's a ton of math and some specific how to read drawings and how to operate equipment. But when it truly comes to like making the part and making a lot of different types of parts, experience is necessary.
Do you think that sort of master apprentice training relationship could be applicable to other industries?
It's I don't know whether it's always been out there, and I'm just now hearing it more of it because I'm in the business that I'm in. But there are lots of books written on the topic now. I think even in some softer white collar settings where not accountants, certain types of law, certain types of investment banking, probably doctors could follow this as well. Like there's book knowledge, but then
Right.
there's everything else, right? And in addition to like bedside manner, but truly like I've got all this data. What do I do with it? And someone in their 20s versus someone in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they're just going to come to dramatically different recommendations or strategies based upon their experience. And
Right.
so I think a lot of larger corporations have more formalized programs where, you know, they may not call it apprenticeship because that does seem kind of tradesy, but it's probably going to come back in vogue at some point if it's not already.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's wildly applicable. I mean, yeah, it's I look for opportunities like that away from work. You know,
Right.
show me a good husband and father of college kids or maybe grandkids. Like that's not too far away from me, you know, over the next 10, 20 years. Like how do people do that well?
Right.
I mean, I need a master and I'll be the apprentice.
Right.
Star Wars probably made that really cool actually recently.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good. I didn't realize Star Wars was gonna come up in here. I like it. I like it. Um, so through your career, you had an opportunity. Obviously, you worked with many different or interacted with many different companies. Was there any sort of common factors that you thought would make a successful company? Like you saw this and you're like, okay, I think this company is gonna be successful.
Um, I mean, I gotta be careful. I'll set myself up for failure. Like humble leadership goes a long way.
Mhm.
Uh, Back to people and teams, like HR, the HR function can be a often overlooked function. But if people are at the center of my business and at the center of a lot of businesses, then how do you attract talent? How do you retain talent? How do you train talent? How do you compensate talent? How do you know, all of these things around people? I remember working with a company that changed oil. They had a quick lube station, and it's a big one. And you're like, well, dozens of companies do this, big chains around the country. I bet quick service restaurants would be in the same spot, right? But you know the difference when you walk into certain chains versus others and how you're greeted, how you're treated, what type of pride people take in their work. And they may not have better technology. They almost certainly don't have better oil, right? Or better air filters going in. So they got the same equipment, they got the same real estate. They might even have worse pricing or competitively disadvantageous pricing, and yet people want that experience. And so I think customers want that experience, and I hope our customers can say the same thing. Is that this part was made with care, it's correct, and all of the softer interactions with the customer that are really people based, all of those went well, right? Those were all opportunities to take greater care with a customer, you know, a phone call, personal delivery, the way we package the part to make sure it arrives there safely. I think those personal touches, the more human side of business, really does go a long way. And I saw that was probably the thing. In reflecting, I recognize like, oh, this is not just a quick service restaurant. This is not just an oil change shop. This is something more. Like there's real culture here.
Right. What do you think? I've been thinking actually a fair amount about this, so I'm glad you brought that up. What do you think you can do or a company can do to get their employees to work that way? I mean, how can you get them inspired, tied in to put the customer first in that fashion?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a universal. It might be a universal truth, but it's
Hmm.
not a universal kind of strategy to deploy it, right? So
Right.
knowing your audience, if something, you know, giving my team, we're going to have a Christmas party here in a couple days, and we work longer hours, and the majority of those are in the daytime. But after our Christmas party, we're going to knock off after, it'll probably be 1:30 by the time we finish our Christmas lunch, and folks can, they'll get time, right, to get out of the shop during the week and either take care of a bunch of errands, do some Christmas shopping, you know, otherwise relax, right? And so time in a setting where you punch in and out of the clock, time is really important. Paid time is huge, right? And whether that's job or remote work opportunities for in a white collar setting, that folks really value that. So it's not always monetary. There tends to be a monetary component, and for us, a profit sharing plan goes a long way, so that folks, when they feel busy and when they know they are busy, that tends to translate to better profitability. And if they get to share in that, that feels a little different than like, man, I'm like dog tired after today, versus man, I think we had a really good day. I worked my tail off, but I think we really had a good day.
Right. No, that's interesting. And I mean, I love this. It's like I spend a lot of time dealing with companies and technology or services. And so a lot of the things you're bringing up are things that I don't necessarily encounter on a daily basis. But it's interesting. I have had a number of conversations. In fact, I think Harvard Business School actually at one of their events had a seminar about opportunities to either invest in or look to lead sort of more traditional industries. And so there's a lot of buzz around this topic, doing something similar to what you have done. Any thoughts, any suggestions, tips for people who would be considering doing something similar to what you did based on your experience?
Man, it's nice when your area of interest, for me, it was light manufacturing. It's nice when you can bring something to the table. So this would be traditionally described as a big career change for me. Now, having evaluated and helped sell businesses in the past, all of the stuff I learned is still true in my current setting. Strategy, accounting, finance, generating revenue, controlling cost, all of that is true. But I think when the passion overlays, and for me it was manufacturing, then you got a recipe for something that could work. And so I would just encourage people to not discount what they've been through in their career thus far, and to truly kind of maybe spend some time in reflection on that, to say, well, what am I uniquely experienced in, gifted at, whatever the right term. And then what if I could dream it up? You might as well start with a dream, right? If I could dream it up, where would I apply that to? Would it be into a tech startup with in a remote work setting? Would it be in highly collaborative, in-person, fill in the blank industry? But I found that my experience, it was far more transferable and helpful than I probably gave myself credit for coming out of the chute.
Interesting. No, that's great. All right, last question for you. In my line of work, we see a lot of situations where a company has recently received investment, and so they'll bring in, so the founder started the company, but they'll bring in a new CEO. And I think one of the challenges is just getting everyone on board with it. Do you have any suggestions? Like, how do you keep the company's culture? How do you win over employees when you come in from the outside from a company that's been established for a while, and while you're introducing changes? Because obviously that's one of the things is, what sort of impact can you make and improvements can you make? So how do you get people on board while you're introducing these changes, which may seem scary to people?
It should be. There's going to be skepticism, even if you are the perfect leader. And I'm not. But if you were the perfect leader, there's still going to be healthy, potentially aggressive skepticism by the folks you're about to lead. There just is. I mean, we're 100 years old. I'm only the fourth owner of the company. And so the guy I replaced had been here 30 plus years, was in his 70s, and everybody was used to working for that guy.
Right.
For better or for worse, it was a known commodity. So here I come in and I'm not known at all. And I can say all the right things, but there's going to be skepticism.
Right.
And so it helps to have a plan. It helps to be really nimble with that plan, though, because some of the things I thought would be important for my people, for the people here, they weren't. And I was burning time and energy on things that they didn't value.
Right.
And I had to listen to figure out, like, well, where were the gaps under the last ownership? And let's address those. And so I think you got to be nimble. I think you got to figure out who your key allies. I mean, I'm in a smaller setting, right, with fewer than 20 employees. Leading a multi-thousand person organization is going to have much different challenges, right? You're not going to be able to touch each individual. In my case, I spent concerted time my first, second, third weeks. I job shadowed. I pretended that I was the apprentice. And I said, show me what you do on this lathe.
Right.
I don't know what a mill is. I don't know how you cut gear teeth. What is heat treating? And right. I listened, and the amount of data and information, truly actionable data and information you can collect that way. I mean, I'm still working on things, processes that weren't great, equipment that wasn't great, customers that we lost, that we should call again. I'm still addressing things that I uncovered in my first couple of weeks of transition. So it takes time. It takes getting your hands dirty, rolling up your sleeves, however you want to say it. And that really takes a lot of humility, and just, it was easy for me to be humble because I was not a machinist. These guys knew I was a machinist. I wasn't going to pretend. I'm a corporate finance guy.
Right.
So they were gracious and patient with me to say, oh, I think he actually wants to know what I do.
Right.
I think he actually wants to know about what I do outside of work. Because if we're going to spend a lot of time together, and I'm going to be the leader for the next 30 years, then we really do need to be a team, a family.
Right. No, that's terrific. That's terrific. Well, that was the last question, Jeff. I really appreciate your time. I think it's some great insights, and such an interesting story. I really, I'm excited to see what you do with progressive engineering, and what lays in the future. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure, buddy.